The Trials of Apollo, The Tower of Nero, by Riordan. Chapter 1. Two-headed snake dude, jamming up my quiet ride. Also, Meg's shoes stink. When travelling through Washington, D.C., one expects to see a few snakes in human clothing. Still, I was concerned when a two-headed boa constrictor boarded our train at Union Station. The creature had threaded himself through a blue silk business suit, looping his body into the sleeves and trouser legs to approximate human limbs. Two heads protruded from the collar of his shirt like twin periscopes. He moved with remarkable grace for what was basically an oversized balloon animal, taking a seat at the opposite end of the coach facing our direction. The other passengers ignored him. No doubt the mist warped their perceptions, making them see just another commuter. The snake made no threatening moves. He didn't even glance at us. For all I knew, he was simply a working stiff monster on his way home. And yet, I could not assume. I whispered to Meg. "I don't want to alarm you." "Shh," she said. Meg took the quiet car rules seriously. Since we'd boarded, most of the noise in the coach had consisted of Meg shushing me every time I spoke, sneezed, or cleared my throat. "But there's a monster," I persisted. She looked up from her complimentary Amtrak magazine, raising an eyebrow above her rhinestone-studded cat-eye glasses. "Where?" I chin-pointed towards the creature. As our train pulled away from the station, his left head stared absently out of the window. His right head flicked its forked tongue into a bottle of water, held in the loop that passed for his hand. "It's an amphibiana," I whispered, then added helpfully, "a snake with a head at each end." Meg frowned, then shrugged, which I took to mean looks peaceful enough, and then she went back to reading. I suppressed the urge to argue, mostly because I didn't want to be shushed again. I couldn't blame Meg for wanting a quiet ride. In the past week we had battled our way through a pack of wild centaurs in Kansas, faced an angry famine spirit at the world's largest fork in Springfield, Missouri. I did not get a selfie, and outrun a pair of blue Kentucky dracons that had chased us several times around Churchill Downs. After all that, a two-headed snake in a suit was perhaps not cause for alarm. Certainly, he wasn't bothering us at the moment. I tried to relax. Meg buried her face in her magazine, enraptured by an article on urban gardening. My young companion had grown taller in the months that I'd known her, but she was still compact enough to prop her red high tops comfortably on the seat back in front of her. Comfortable for her, I mean, not for me or the other passengers. Meg hadn't changed her shoes since our run around the racetrack, and they looked and smelled like the back end of a horse. At least she had traded her tattered green dress for Dollar General jeans and a green Vincornus Imperant t-shirt she'd bought at the Camp Jupiter gift shop. With her page boy haircut beginning to grow out and an angry red zit erupting on her chin, she no longer looked like a kindergartner. She looked almost her age, a sixth grader, entering the circle of hell known as puberty. I had not shared this observation with Meg. For one thing, I had my own acne to worry about. For another thing, as my master, Meg could literally order me to jump out of the window, and I would be forced to obey. The train rolled through the suburbs of Washington. The late afternoon sun flickered between the buildings like the lamp of an old movie projector. It was a wonderful time of day, when a sun god should be wrapping up his work, heading to the old stables to park his chariot, then kicking back at his palace with a goblet of nectar, a few dozen adoring nymphs, and a new season of the real goddesses of Olympus to binge-watch. Not for me, though. I got a creaking seat on an Amtrak train and hours to binge-watch Meg's stinky shoes. At the opposite end of the car, the amphibiana still made no threatening moves, unless one considered drinking water from a non-reusable bottle an act of aggression. Why then were my neck hairs tingling? I couldn't regulate my breathing. I felt trapped in my window seat. Perhaps I was just nervous about what awaited us in New York. After 6 months in this miserable mortal body, I was approaching my endgame. Meg and I had blundered our way across the United States and back again. We'd freed ancient oracles, defeated legions of monsters, and suffered the untold horrors of the American public transportation system. Finally, after many tragedies, we had triumphed over two of the triumvirate's evil emperors, Commodus and Caligula, at Camp Jupiter. But the worst was yet to come. We were heading back to where our troubles began. Manhattan, the base of Nero Claudius Caesar, Meg's abusive stepfather and my least favourite fiddle player. Even if we somehow managed to defeat him, a still more powerful threat lurked in the background. My arch-nemesis, Python, who had taken up residence at my sacred oracle of Delphi, as if it were some cut-price Airbnb. In the next few days, either I would defeat these enemies and become the god Apollo again, assuming my father's use allowed it, or I would die trying. One way or the other, my time as Lester Papadopoulos was coming to an end. Perhaps it wasn't a mystery why I felt so agitated. I tried to focus on the beautiful sunset. I tried not to obsess about my impossible to-do list or the two-headed snake in row 16. I made it all the way to Philadelphia without having a nervous breakdown. But as we pulled out of 30th Street Station, two things became clear to me. One, the amphibiana wasn't leaving the train, which meant he probably wasn't a daily commuter, and two, my danger radar was pinging more strongly than ever. I felt stalked. I had the same ants in the paws feeling I used to get when playing hide and seek with Artemis and her hunters in the woods, just before they jumped from the bushes and riddled me with arrows. That was back when my sister and I were younger deities and could still enjoy such simple amusements. I risked a look at the amphibiana and nearly jumped out of my jeans. The creature was staring at me now, his 4 yellow eyes unblinking, and were they beginning to glow? Oh, no. Glowing eyes are never good. I need to get out, I told Meg. Shh, but that creature, I want to check on it. His eyes are glowing. Meg squinted at Mr. Snake. No, they're not. They're gleaming. Besides, he's just sitting there. He's sitting there suspiciously. The passenger behind us whispered, Shh. Meg raised her eyebrows at me. Told you so. I pointed at the aisle and pouted at Meg. She rolled her eyes, entangled herself from the hammock-like position she'd taken up and let me out. Don't start a fight, she ordered. Great. Now I would have to wait for the monster to attack before I could defend myself. I stood in the aisle, waiting for the blood to return to my numb legs. Whoever invented the human circulatory system had done a lousy job. The amphibiana hadn't moved. His eyes were still fixed on me. He appeared to be in some sort of trance. Maybe he was building up his energy for a massive attack. Did amphibiana do that? I scoured my memory for facts about the creature, but came up with very little. The Roman writer Pliny claimed that wearing a live baby amphibiana around your neck could assure you a safe pregnancy. Not helpful. Wearing its skin could make you attractive to potential partners. No, also not helpful. Its heads could spit poison. Aha, that must be it. The monster was powering up for a dual-mouth poison vomit hose down of the train car. What to do? Despite my occasional bursts of godly power and skill, I couldn't count on one when I needed it. Most of the time I was still a pitiful 17-year-old boy. I couldn't retrieve my bow and quiver from the overhead luggage compartment. Being armed would be nice. Then again, that would telegraph my hostile intentions. Meg would probably scold me for overreacting. I'm sorry, Meg, but those eyes were glowing, not gleaming. If only I'd kept a smaller weapon, perhaps a dagger, concealed in my shirt. Why wasn't I a god of daggers? I decided to stroll down the aisle as if I was simply on my way to the restroom. If the amphibiana attacked, I would scream. Hopefully Meg would put down her magazine long enough to come rescue me. At least I would have forced the inevitable confrontation. If the snake didn't make a move, well, perhaps he really was harmless. Then I would go to the restroom because I actually needed to. I stumbled on my tingly legs, which didn't help my look-casual approach. I considered whistling a carefree tune, and then remembered the whole quiet car thing. 4 rows from the monster, my heart hammered. Those eyes were definitely glowing, definitely fixed on me. The monster sat unnaturally motionless, even for a reptile. 2 rows away, my trembling jaw and sweaty face made it hard to appear nonchalant. The amphibiana's suit looked expensive and well-tailored. Probably, being a giant snake, he couldn't wear clothes right off the rack. His glistening brown and yellow diamond-patterned skin did not seem like the sort of thing one might wear to look more attractive on a dating app, unless one dated boa constrictors. When the amphibiana made his move, I thought I was prepared. I was wrong. The creature lunged with incredible speed, lassoing my wrist with the loop of his false left arm. I was too surprised even to yelp. If he'd meant to kill me, I would have died. Instead, he simply tightened his grip, stopping me in my tracks, clinging to me as if he were drowning. He spoke in a low double hiss that resonated in my bone marrow. The son of Hades, cavern runner's friend, must show the secret way unto the throne. On Nero's own your lives do now depend. As abruptly as he grabbed me, he let me go. Muscles undulated along the length of his body as if he were coming to a slow boil. He sat up straight, elongating his neck until he was almost nose to nose with me. The glow faded from his eyes. What I do... His left head looked at his right head. How? His right head seemed equally mystified. He looked at me. Who are you? Wait, did I miss the Baltimore stop? My wife is going to kill me. I was too shocked to speak. Those lines he'd spoken, I recognized the poetic meter. This amphibiana had delivered a prophetic message. It dawned on me that this monster might in fact be a regular commuter who'd been possessed, hijacked by the whims of fate because, of course, he was a snake. Since ancient times, snakes have channeled the wisdom of the earth because they live underground. A giant serpent would be especially susceptible to oracular voices. I wasn't sure what to do. Should I apologize to him for his inconvenience? Should I give him a tip? And if he wasn't the threat that had set off my danger radar, what was? I was saved from an awkward conversation, and the amphibiano was saved from his wife killing him, when 2 crossbow bolts flew across the coach and killed him instead, pinning the poor snake's necks against the back wall. I shrieked. Several nearby passengers shushed me. The amphibiano disintegrated into yellow dust, leaving nothing behind but a well-tailored suit. I raised my hand slowly and turned, as if pivoting on a landmine. I half expected another crossbow bolt to pierce my chest. There was no way I could dodge an attack from someone with such accuracy. The best I could do was appear non-threatening. I was good at that. At the opposite end of the coach stood 2 hulking figures. One was a Germanus. Judging from his beard and scraggly beaded hair, his hide armour and his imperial gold greaves and breastplate, I did not recognise him, but I had met too many of his kind recently. I had no doubt who he worked for. Nero's people had found us. Meg was still seated, holding her magical twin golden seeker blades, but the Germanus had the edge of his broadsword against her neck, encouraging her to stay put. His companion was the crossbow shooter. She was even taller and heavier, wearing an Amtrak conductor's uniform that fooled no one, except apparently all the mortals on the train, who didn't give the newcomers a second look. Under her conductor's hat, the shooter's scalp was shaved on the sides, leaving a lustrous brown mane down the middle that curled over her shoulder in a braided rope. Her short-sleeved shirt stretched so tight against her muscular shoulders, I thought her epaulets and name tag would pop off. Her arms were covered with interlocking circular tattoos, and around her neck was a thick golden ring, a torque. I hadn't seen one of those in ages. This woman was a Gaul. The realization made my stomach frost over. In the old days of the Roman Republic, Gauls were feared even more than the Germani. She had already reloaded her double crossbow, and was pointing at my head. Hanging from her belt was a variety of other weapons, a gladius, a club, and a dagger. Oh, sure, she got a dagger. Keeping her eyes on me, she jerked her chin towards her shoulder, the universal sign for, "Come here or I'll shoot you." I calculated my odds of charging down the aisle and tackling our enemies before they killed Meg and me. 0. My odds of cowering in fear behind a chair while Meg took care of both of them, slightly better, but still not great. I made my way down the aisle, my knees wobbling. The mortal passengers frowned as I passed. As near as I could figure, they thought my shriek had been a disturbance unworthy of the quiet car, and the conductor was now calling me out. The fact that the conductor wielded a crossbow and had just killed a 2-headed serpentine commuter did not seem to register with them. I reached my row and glanced at Meg, partly to make sure she was all right, partly because I was curious why she hadn't attacked. Just holding a sword to Meg's throat was normally not enough to discourage her. She was staring in shock at the Gaul. "Lucas Selwer?" The woman nodded curtly, which told me 2 horrifying things. First, Meg knew her. Second, Lucas Selwer was her name. As she regarded Meg, the fierceness in the Gaul's eyes dialed back a few notches. From "I'm going to kill everyone now" to "I'm going to kill everyone soon." "Yes, sapling," said the Gaul. "Now put away your weapons before Gunther is obliged to chop off your head." Chapter 2. Pastries for dinner? Your fave Lester could never. Got to pee. Later. The sword wielder looked delighted. Chop off head. His name, Gunther, was printed on an Amtrak name tag he wore over his armour, his only concession to being in disguise. Not yet. Lugaselwa kept her eyes on us. As you can see, Gunther loves decapitating people, so let's play nice. Come along. Lou, Meg said. Why? When it came to expressing hurt, Meg's voice was a fine-tuned instrument. I'd heard her mourn the deaths of our friends. I'd heard her describe her father's murder. I'd heard her rage against her foster father, Nero, who had killed her dad and twisted her mind with years of emotional abuse. But when addressing Lugaselwa, Meg's voice played in an entirely different key. She sounded as if her best friend had just dismembered her favourite doll for no reason and without warning. She sounded hurt, confused, incredulous, as if in a life full of indignities, this was one indignity she could never have anticipated. Lou's jaw muscles tightened. Veins bulged on her temples. I couldn't tell if she was angry, feeling guilty, or showing us her warm and fuzzy side. Do you remember what I taught you about duty, sapling? Meg gulped back a sob. Do you? Lou said, her voice sharper. Yes, Meg whispered. Then get your things and come along. Lou pushed Gunther's sword away from Meg's neck. The big man grumbled, which I assumed was Germanic for, I never get to have any fun. Looking bewildered, Meg rose and opened the overhead compartment. I couldn't understand why she was going along so passively with Lugaselwa's orders. We'd fought against worse odds. Who was this Gaul? That's it, I whispered as Meg passed me my backpack. We're giving up? Lester, Meg muttered. Just do what I say. I shouldered my pack, my bow and quiver. Meg fastened her gardening belt around her waist. Lou and Gunter did not look concerned that I was now armed with arrows and Meg with an ample supply of heirloom vegetable seeds. As we got our gear in order, the mortal passengers gave us annoyed looks, but no one shushed us, probably because they did not want to anger the two large conductors escorting us out. This way. Lou pointed with her crossbow to the exit behind her. The others are waiting. The others? I did not want to meet any more Gauls or Gunters, but Meg followed Lou meekly through the plexiglass double doors. I went next, Gunter breathing down my neck behind me, probably contemplating how easy it would be to separate my head from my body. A gangway connected our car to the next, a loud, lurching hallway with automatic double doors on either end, a closet-sized restroom in one corner, and exterior doors to port and starboard. I considered throwing myself out of one of these exits and hoping for the best, but I feared the best would mean dying on impact with the ground. It was pitch black outside. Judging from the rumble of the corrugated steel panels beneath my feet, I guessed the train was going well over 100 miles an hour. Through the far set of plexiglass doors, I spied the cafe car. A grim concession counter, a row of booths, and a half-dozen large men milling around. More Germani. Nothing good was going to happen in there. If Meg and I were going to make a break for it, this was our chance. Before I could make any sort of desperate move, Lugaselwa stopped abruptly just before the cafe car doors. She turned to face us. Gunter, she snapped, check the bathroom for infiltrators. This seemed to confuse Gunter as much as it did me, either because he didn't see the point, or he had no idea what an infiltrator was. I wondered why Lugaselwa was acting so paranoid. Did she worry we had a legion of demigods stashed in the restroom, waiting to spring out and rescue us? Or perhaps, like me, she'd once surprised a cyclops on the porcelain throne and no longer trusted public toilets. After a brief stare down, Gunter muttered, and did as he was told. As soon as he poked his head in the Lou, the other Lou, not Lou, fixed us with an intense stare. When we go through the tunnel to New York, she said, you will both ask to use the toilet. I'd taken a lot of silly commands before, mostly from Meg, but this was a new low. Actually, I need to go now, I said. Hold it, she said. I glanced at Meg to see if this made any sense to her, but she was staring morosely at the floor. Gunter emerged from potty patrol. Nobody. Poor guy. If you had to check a train's toilet for infiltrators, the least you could hope for was a few infiltrators to kill. Right then, said Lou. Come on. She herded us into the cafe car. 6 Germani turned and stared at us, their meaty fists full of danishes and cups of coffee. Barbarians. Who else would eat breakfast pastries at night? The warriors were dressed like Gunter in hides and gold armour, cleverly disguised behind Amtrak name tags. One of the men, Adel-Labort, the number 1 most popular Germanic baby boy's name in 162 BCE, barked a question at Lou in a language I didn't recognise. Lou responded in the same tongue. Her answer seemed to satisfy the warriors, who went back to their coffee and danishes. Gunter joined them, grumbling about how hard it was to find good enemies to decapitate. Sit there, Lou told us, pointing to a window booth. Meg slid in glumly. I settled in across from her, propping my longbow, quiver and backpack next to me. Lou stood within earshot, just in case we tried to discuss an escape plan. She needn't have worried. Meg still wouldn't meet my eyes. I wondered again who Lugaselwa was, and what she meant to Meg. Not once in our months of travel had Meg mentioned her. This fact disturbed me. Rather than indicating that Lou was unimportant, it made me suspect she was very important indeed. And why a Gaul? Gauls had been unusual in Nero's Rome. By the time he became emperor, most of them had been conquered and forcibly civilized. Those who still wore tattoos and talks and lived according to the old ways had been pushed to the fringes of Brittany or forced over to the British Isles. The name Lugaselwa, my Gaulish had never been very good, but I thought it meant beloved of the god Lucas. I shuddered. Those Celtic deities were a strange, fierce bunch. My thoughts were too unhinged to solve the puzzle of Lou. I kept thinking back to the poor Amphisbaena she'd killed, a harmless monster commuter who would never make it home to his wife, all because a prophecy had made him a pawn. His message had left me shaken, a verse in Terza Rima, like the one we'd received at Camp Jupiter. O son of Zeus, the final challenge face, the tower of Nero, to alone ascend, dislodge the beast that hast usurped thy place. Yes, I had memorised the cursed thing. Now we had our second set of instructions, clearly linked to the previous set, because the first and third lines rhymed with ascend. Stupid Dante and his stupid idea for a never-ending poem structure. The son of Hades, cavern runner's friend, must show the secret way unto the throne. On Nero's own your lives do now depend. I knew a son of Hades, Nico D'Angelo. He was probably still at Camp Half-Blood on Long Island. If he had some secret way to Nero's throne, he'd never let the chance to show us unless we escaped this train. How Nico might be a cavern runner's friend, I had no idea. The last line of the new verse was just cruel. We were presently surrounded by Nero's own, so of course our lives depended on them. I wanted to believe there was more to that line, something positive. Maybe tied to the fact that Lou had ordered us to go to the bathroom when we entered the tunnel to New York. But given Lou's hostile expression and the presence of her 7 heavily caffeinated and sugar-fueled Germanist friends, I didn't feel optimistic. I squirmed in my seat. Oh, why had I thought about the bathroom? I really needed to go now. Outside, the illuminated billboards of New Jersey zipped by, ads for auto dealerships where you could buy an impractical race car, injury lawyers you could employ to blame the other drivers once you crashed that race car, casinos where you could gamble away the money you won from the injury lawsuits. The great circle of life. The station stop for Newark Airport came and went. God's help me, I was so desperate I considered making a break for it. In Newark. Meg stayed put, so I did too. The tunnel to New York would be coming up soon. Perhaps, instead of asking to use the restroom, we could spring into action against our captors. Lou seemed to read my thoughts. It's a good thing you surrendered. Nero has 3 other teams like mine on this train alone. Every passage, every train, bus and flight into Manhattan has been covered. Nero's got the Oracle of Delphi on his side, remember. He knew you were coming tonight. You were never going to get into the city without being caught. Way to crush my hopes, Lugaselwa, telling me that Nero had his ally Python peering into the future for him, using my sacred oracle against me. Harsh. Meg, however, suddenly perked up, as if something Lou said gave her hope. So, how is it you're the one who found us, Lou? Just luck? Lou's tattoos rippled as she flexed her arms, the swirling Celtic circles making me seasick. I know you, sapling, she said. I know how to track you. There is no luck. I could think of several gods of luck who would disagree with her statement, but I didn't argue. Being a captive had dampened my desire for small talk. Lou turned to her companions. As soon as we get to Penn Station, we deliver our captives to the escort team. I want no mistakes. No one kills the girl or the god unless it's absolutely necessary. Is it necessary now? Gunter asked. No, Lou said. The Princeps has plans for them. He wants them alive. The Princeps. My mouth tasted bitterer than the bitterest Amtrak coffee. Being marched through Nero's front door was not how I'd planned to confront him. One moment, we were rumbling across a wasteland of New Jersey warehouses and dockyards. The next, we were plunged into darkness, entering the tunnel that would take us under the Hudson River. On the intercom, a garbled announcement informed us that our next stop would be Penn Station. I need to pee, Meg announced. I stared at her, dumbfounded. Was she really going to follow Lou's strange instructions? The Gaul had captured us and killed an innocent 2-headed snake. Why would Meg trust her? Meg pressed her heel hard on the top of my foot. Yes, I squeaked. I also need to pee. For me, at least, this was painfully true. Hold it, Gunter grumbled. I really need to pee. Meg bounced up and down. Lou heaved a sigh. Her exasperation did not sound faked. Fine. She turned to her squad. I'll take them. The rest of you stay here and prepare to disembark. None of the Germani objected. They probably heard enough of Gunter's complaints about potty patrol. They began shoving last-minute Danishes into their mouths and gathering up their equipment as Meg and I extracted ourselves from our booth. Your gear, Lou reminded me. I blinked. Right. Who went to the bathroom without their bow and quiver? That would be stupid. I grabbed my things. Lou herded us back into the gangway. As soon as the double doors closed behind her, she murmured, Now. Meg bolted for the quiet car. Hey! Lou shoved me out of the way, pausing long enough to mutter, block the door, decouple the coaches, then raced after Meg. Do what now? 2 scimitars flashed into existence in Lou's hands. Wait, she had Meg's swords? No. Just before the end of the gangway, Meg turned to face her, summoning her own blades, and the 2 women fought like demons. They were both Dimicare, the rarest form of gladiator. That must mean I didn't have time to think about what that meant. Behind me, the Germani was shouting and scrambling. They would be through the doors any second. I didn't understand exactly what was happening, but it occurred to my stupid, slow, mortal brain that perhaps, just perhaps, Lou was trying to help us. If I didn't block the doors like she'd asked, we would be overrun by 7 angry, sticky-fingered barbarians. I slammed my foot against the base of the double doors. There were no handles. I had to press my palms against the panels and push them together to keep them shut. Gunther tackled the doors at full speed, the impact nearly dislocating my jaw. The other German I piled in behind him. My only advantages were the narrow space they were in, which made it difficult for them to combine their strength, and the German's own lack of sense. Instead of working together to prise the doors apart, they simply pushed and shoved against one another, using Gunther's face as a battering ram. Behind me, Lou and Meg jabbed and slashed, their blades furiously clanging against one another. "Good sapling," Lou said under her breath. "You remember your training?" Then louder, for the sake of our audience, "I'll kill you, foolish girl." I imagined how this must look to the Germany on the other side of the plexiglass. Their comrade Lou, trapped in combat with an escaped prisoner, while I attempted to hold them back. My hands were going numb. My arm and chest muscles ached. I glanced around desperately for an emergency door lock, but there was only an emergency open button. What good was that? The train roared on through the tunnel. I estimated we had only minutes before we pulled into Penn Station, where Nero's escort team would be waiting. I did not wish to be escorted. "Decouple the coaches," Lou had told me. How was I supposed to do that, especially while holding the gangway door shut? I was no train engineer. Choo-choos were more Hephaestus's thing. I looked over my shoulder, scanning the gangway. Shockingly, there was no clearly labelled switch that would allow a passenger to decouple the train. What was wrong with Amtrak? There, on the floor, a series of hinged metal flaps overlapped, creating a safe surface for passengers to walk across when the train twisted and turned. One of those flaps had been kicked open, perhaps by Lou, exposing the coupling underneath. Even if I could reach it from where I stood, which I couldn't, I doubted I would have the strength and dexterity to stick my arm down there, cut the cables and prise open the clamp. The gap between the floor panels was too narrow, the coupling too far down. Just to hit it from here, I would have to be the world's greatest archer. Oh, wait. Against my chest, the doors were bowing under the weight of 7 barbarians. An axe blade jutted through the rubber lining next to my ear. Turning around so I could shoot my bow would be madness. Yes, I thought hysterically, let's do that. I bought myself a moment by pulling out an arrow and jabbing it through the gap between the doors. Gunther howled. The pressure eased as the clump of Germani readjusted. I flipped around so my back was to the plexiglass, one heel wedged against the base of the doors. I fumbled with my bow and managed to knock an arrow. My new bow was a good level weapon from the vaults of Camp Jupiter. My archery skills had improved dramatically over the last 6 months. Still, this was a terrible idea. It was impossible to shoot properly with one's back against a hard surface. I simply couldn't draw the bowstring far enough. Nevertheless, I fired. The arrow disappeared into the gap in the floor, completely missing the coupling. "Penn Station in just a minute," said a voice on the PA system. "Doors will open on the left." "Running out of time," Lou shouted. She slashed at Meg's head. Meg jabbed low, nearly impaling the Gaul's thigh. I shot another arrow. This time the point sparked against the clasp, but the train cars remained stubbornly connected. The Germani pounded against the doors. A plexiglass panel popped out of its frame. A fist reached through and grabbed my shirt. With a desperate shriek, I lurched away from the doors and shot one last time at a full draw. The arrow sliced through the cables and slammed into the clasp. Within a shudder and a groan, the coupling broke. Germani poured into the gangway as I leapt across the widening gap between the coaches. I almost skewered myself on Meg's and Lou's scimitars, but I somehow managed to regain my footing. I turned as the rest of the train shot into the darkness at 70 miles an hour, 7 Germani staring at us in disbelief and yelling insults I will not repeat. For another 50 feet, our decoupled section of the train rolled forward of its own momentum, then slowed to a stop. Meg and Lou lowered their weapons. A brave passenger from the quiet car dared to stick her head out and ask what was going on. I shushed her. Lou glared at me. "Took you long enough, Lester. Now, let's move before my men come back. You two just went from capture alive to proof of death is acceptable." Chapter 3. Arrow of Wisdom. Hook me up with a hideout? No, not that one. No! "I'm confused," I said as we stumbled along in the dark tunnels. "Are we still prisoners?" Lou glanced at me, then at Meg. "Dense for a god, isn't he?" "You have no idea," Meg grumbled. "Do you work for Nero or not?" I demanded. "And how exactly?" I wagged my finger from Lou to Meg, silently asking, "How do you know each other? Or perhaps, are you related since you're equally annoying?" Then I caught the glint of their matching gold rings, one on each of their middle fingers. I remembered the way Lou and Meg had fought, their 4 blades slicing and stabbing in perfect synchronization. The obvious truth smacked me in the face. "You trained Meg," I realised, "to be a Dimicatus. And she's kept her skills sharp." Lou elbowed Meg affectionately. "I'm pleased, sapling." I had never seen Meg look so proud about anything. She tackled her old trainer in a hug. I knew you weren't bad. Lou didn't seem to know what to do with the hug. She patted Meg on the shoulder. I'm plenty bad, Sapling, but I'm not going to let Nero torture you any more. Let's keep moving. Torture. Yes, that was the word. I wondered how Meg could trust this woman. She'd killed the amphispiana without batting an eye. And I had no doubt she would do the same to me if she felt it necessary. Worse, Nero paid her salary. Whether Lou had saved us from capture or not, she trained Meg, which meant she must have stood by her for years while Nero tormented my young friend emotionally and mentally. Lou had been part of the problem, part of Meg's indoctrination into the Emperor's twisted family. I worried that Meg was slipping into her old patterns. Perhaps Nero had figured out a way to manipulate her indirectly through his former teacher she admired. On the other hand, I wasn't sure how to broach that subject. We were trekking through a maze of subway maintenance tunnels with only Lou as our guide. She had a lot more weapons than I did. Also, Meg was my master. She told me we were going to follow Lou, so that's what we did. We continued our march, Meg and Lou trudging side by side, me straggling behind. I'd like to tell you I was guarding their six or performing some other important task, but I think Meg had just forgotten about me. Overhead, steel-caged work lights cast prison bar shadows across the brick walls. Mud and slime coated the floor, exuding a smell like the old casks of wine Dionysus insisted on keeping in his cellar, despite the fact that they had long ago turned to vinegar. At least Meg's sneakers would no longer smell like horse poop. They would now be coated with new and different toxic wastes. After stumbling along for another 1,000,000 miles, I ventured to ask, Miss Lou, where are we going? I was startled by the volume of my own voice echoing through the dark. Away from the search grid, she said, as if this were obvious. Nero has tapped most of the closed-circuit cameras in Manhattan. We need to get off the radar. It was a bit jarring to hear a ghoulish warrior talking about radar and cameras. I wondered again how Lou had come into Nero's service. As much as I hated to admit it, the emperors of the triumvirate were basically minor gods. They were picky about which followers they allowed to spend eternity with them. The German eye made sense. Dense and cruel as they might be, the imperial bodyguards were fiercely loyal. But why a Gaul? Luga Selva must have been valuable to Nero for reasons beyond her sword skills. I didn't trust that such a warrior would turn on her master after 2 millennia. My suspicions must have radiated from me like heat from an oven. Lou glanced back and noted my frown. Apollo, if I wanted you dead, you would already be dead. True, I thought, but Lou could have added, if I wanted to trick you into following me so I could deliver you alive to Nero, this is exactly what I'd be doing. Lou quickened her pace. Meg scowled at me like, be nice to my Gaul. Then she hurried to catch up. I lost track of time. The adrenaline spike from the train fight faded, leaving me weary and sore. Sure, I was still running for my life, but I'd spent most of the last 6 months running for my life. I couldn't maintain a productive state of panic indefinitely. Tunnel goo soaked into my socks. My shoes felt like squishy clay pots. For a while, I was impressed how well Lou knew the tunnels. She forged ahead, taking us down one turn after another. Then, when she hesitated at a junction a bit too long, I realised the truth. You don't know where we're going, I said. She scowled. I told you, away from the search grid. Cameras, yes, but where are we going? Somewhere. Anywhere safe. I laughed. I surprised myself by actually feeling relieved. If Lou was this clueless about our destination, then I felt safer trusting her. She had no grand plan. We were lost. What a relief. Lou did not seem to appreciate my sense of humour. Excuse me if I had to improvise, she grumbled. You're fortunate I found you on that train rather than one of the Emperor's other search parties. Otherwise you'd be in Nero's holding cell right now. Meg gave me another scowl. Yeah, Lester. Besides, it's fine. She pointed to an old section of Greek key design tile along the left-hand corridor, perhaps left over from an abandoned subway line. I recognised that. There should be an exit up ahead. I wanted to ask how she could possibly know this. Then I remembered Meg had spent a great deal of her childhood roaming dark alleys, derelict buildings and other strange and unusual places in Manhattan, with Nero's blessing, the evil imperial version of free-range parenting. I could imagine a younger Meg exploring these tunnels, doing cartwheels in the muck and growing mushrooms in forgotten locations. We followed her for, 6 or 7 miles? That's what it felt like, at least. Once we stopped abruptly when a deep and distant boom echoed through the corridor. Train? I asked nervously, though we'd left the tracks long behind. Lou tilted her head. No, that was thunder. I didn't see how that could be. When we'd entered the tunnel in New Jersey, there'd be no sign of rain. I didn't like the idea of sudden thunderstorms so close to the Empire State Building, entrance to Mount Olympus, home of Zeus, aka Big Daddy Lightning Bolt. Undeterred, Meg forged ahead. Finally, our tunnel dead-ended at a metal ladder. Overhead was a loose manhole cover, light and water spilling from one edge like a weeping crescent moon. I remember, this opens to an alleyway, Meg announced. No cameras, at least there weren't any last time I was here. Lou grunted as if to say, good work, or maybe just, this is going to suck. The Gaul ascended first. Moments later, the three of us stood in a storm-lashed alley between two apartment buildings. Lightning forked overhead, lacing the dark clouds with gold. Rain needled my face and poked me in the eyes. Where had this tempest come from? Was it a welcome home present from my father, or a warning? Or maybe it was just a regular summer storm? Sadly, my time as Lester had taught me that not every meteorological event was about me. Thunder rattled the windows on either side of us. Judging from the yellow brick facades of the buildings, I guessed we were on the Upper East Side somewhere, though that seemed an impossibly long underground walk from Penn Station. At the end of the alley, taxis zipped down a busy street. Park Avenue? Lexington? I hugged my arms. My teeth chattered. My quiver was starting to fill with water, the strap getting heavier across my shoulder. I turned to Lou and Meg. I don't suppose either of you has a magic item that stops rain? From her belt of infinite weapons, Lou pulled something that I had assumed was a police baton. She clicked a button on the side and it blossomed into an umbrella. Naturally, it was just big enough for Lou and Meg. I sighed. I walked right into that, didn't I? Yup, Meg agreed. I pulled my backpack over my head, which effectively stopped 0.003% of the rain from hitting my face. My clothes were plastered to my skin. My heart slowed and sped up at random, as if it couldn't decide whether to be exhausted or terrified. What now? I asked. We find some place to regroup, said Lou. I eyed the nearest dumpster. With all the real estate Nero controls in Manhattan, you don't have one secret base we could use? Lou's laugh was the only dry thing in that alley. I told you, Nero monitors all public security cameras in New York. How closely do you think he monitors his own properties? You want to risk it? I hated that she had a point. I wanted to trust Lugaselwa, because Meg trusted her. I recognised that Lou had saved us on the train. Also, the Amphisbaeana's last line of prophecy tumbled around in my head. On Nero's own your lives do now depend. That could refer to Lou, which meant she might be trustworthy. On the other hand, Lou had killed the Amphisbaeana. For all I knew, if he had lived a few more minutes, he might have spouted another bit of iambic pentameter. Not Lou, not Lou. Don't ever trust the Gaul. So, if you're on our side, I said, why all the pretending on the train? Why kill that Amphisbaeana? Why the charade about escorting us to the bathroom? Lou grunted. First of all, I'm on Meg's side. Don't much care about you. Meg smirked. That's a good point. As for the monster, Lou shrugged, it was a monster. It'll regenerate into Tartarus eventually. No great loss. I suspected Mr. Snake's wife might disagree with that. Then again, not too long ago, I had regarded demigods in much the same way that Lou regarded the Amphisbaeana. As for the play acting, she said, if I turned on my comrades, I ran the risk of you two getting killed, me getting killed, or one of my men escaping and reporting back to Nero. I would have been outed as a traitor. But they all got away, I protested. They'll all report back to Nero and, they'll tell Nero that the last time they saw me, Lou said, I was fighting like crazy, trying to stop you from escaping. Meg detached herself from Lou's side, her eyes widening. But Nero will think you're dead. You can stay with us. Lou gave her a rueful smile. No, sapling. I'll have to go back soon. If we're lucky, Nero will believe I'm still on his side. But why? Meg demanded. You can't go back. It's the only way, Lou said. I had to make sure you didn't get caught coming into the city. Now, I need time to explain to you what's going on, what Nero is planning. I didn't like the hesitation in her voice. Whatever Nero was planning, it had shaken Lou badly. Besides, she continued, if you're going to stand any chance of beating him, you'll need someone on the inside. It's important that Nero think I tried to stop you, failed, and then returned to him with my tail between my legs. But my brain was too waterlogged to form any more questions. Never mind, you can explain when we get somewhere dry. Speaking of which, I've got an idea, Meg said. She jogged to the corner of the alley. Lou and I sloshed along behind her. The signs on the nearest corner informed us that we were at Lexington and 75th. Meg grinned. See? See what? I said. What are you? Her meaning hit me like an Amtrak quiet car. Oh, no, I said. No, They've done enough for us. I won't put them in any more danger, especially if Nero is after us. But last time you were totally fine with... Meg, no. Lou looked back and forth between us. What are you, talking about? I wanted to stick my head in my backpack and scream. 6 months ago, I'd had no qualms about hitting up an old friend who lived a few blocks from here. But now, after all the trouble and heartbreak I brought to every place that had harboured me, no, I could not do that again. How about this? I drew the arrow of Dodona from my quiver. We'll ask my prophetic friend. Surely it has a better idea, perhaps access to last-minute hotel deals. I lifted the projectile in my trembling fingers. Oh, great arrow of Dodona. Is he talking to that arrow? Lou asked Meg. He talks to inanimate objects, Meg told her. Humour him. We need your advice, I said, suppressing the urge to kick Meg in the shin. Where should we go for shelter? The arrow's voice buzzed in my brain. Didst thou callest me thy friend? It sounded pleased. Yes. I gave my companions a thumbs up. We need a place to hide out and regroup, somewhere nearby, but away from Nero's surveillance cameras and whatnot. The Emperor's whatnot is formidable indeed, the arrow agreed, but thou already knowest the answer to thy question. O Lester, seekest thou the place of the 7-layer dip? With that, the projectile fell silent. I groaned in misery. The arrow's message was perfectly clear. Oh, for the yummy 7-layer dip of our hostess. Oh, for the comfort of that cosy apartment. But it wasn't right. I couldn't. What did it say? Meg demanded. I tried to think of an alternative, but I was so tired I couldn't even lie. Fine, I said. We go to Percy Jackson's place. Chapter 4. This child is too cute. Please, no more adorable. Whoops, my heart just broke. Hello, Mrs. Jackson. Is Percy home? I shivered and dripped on her welcome mat, my two equally bedraggled companions behind me. For a heartbeat, Sally Jackson remained frozen in her doorway, a smile on her face, as if she'd been expecting a delivery of flowers or cookies. We were not that. Her driftwood brown hair was tinselled with more grey than it was 6 months ago. She wore tattered jeans, a loose green blouse, and a blob of apple sauce on the top of her bare left foot. She was not pregnant anymore, which probably explained the sound of the giggling baby inside her apartment. Her surprise passed quickly. Since she'd raised a demigod, she doubtless had lots of experience with the unexpected. Apollo, Meg, and, She sized up our gigantic, tattooed, mohawked train conductor. Hello, you poor things, come in and dry off. The Jackson living room was as cosy as I remembered. The smell of baking mozzarella and tomatoes wafted from the kitchen. Jazz played on an old-fashioned turntable. Ah, Winton Marsalis. Several comfy sofas and chairs were available to plop upon. I scanned the room for Percy Jackson, but found only a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, rumpled khakis, oven mitts, and a pink dress shirt covered by a bright yellow apron splattered with tomato sauce. He was bouncing a giggly baby on his hip. The child's yellow onesie pyjamas matched the man's apron so perfectly that I wondered if they'd come as a set. I'm sure the chef and baby made for an adorable, heartwarming scene. Unfortunately, I'd grown up on stories about titans and gods who cooked and or ate their children, so I was perhaps not quite as charmed as I might have been. There is a man in your apartment, I informed Mrs. Jackson. Sally laughed. This is my husband, Paul. Excuse me a sec. I'll be right back. She dashed towards the bathroom. Hi. Paul smiled at us. This is Estelle. Estelle giggled and drooled as if her own name was the funniest joke in the universe. She had Percy's sea-green eyes and clearly her mother's good nature. She also had wisps of black and silver hair like Paul, which I had never seen on a baby. She would be the world's first salt and pepper toddler. All in all, it seemed Estelle had inherited a good genetic package. Hello. I wasn't sure whether to address Paul, Estelle, or whatever was cooking in the kitchen, which smelled delicious. Not to be rude, but we were hoping to, thanks, Mrs. Jackson. Sally had emerged from the bathroom and was now busily wrapping Meg, Lou, and me in fluffy turquoise bath towels. We were hoping to see Percy, I finished. Estelle squealed with delight. She seemed to like the name Percy. I'd like to see him too, Sally said, but he's on his way to the West Coast, with Annabeth. They left a few days ago. She pointed to a framed picture on the nearest end table. In the photo, my old friends Percy and Annabeth sat side by side in the Jackson family's dented Prius, both of them smiling out of the driver's side window. In the back seat was a mutual satyr friend, Grover Underwood, mugging for the camera, eyes crossed, tongue stuck out sideways, hands flashing peace signs. Annabeth leaned into Percy, her arms wrapped around his neck like she was about to kiss him or possibly choke him. Behind the wheel, Percy gave the camera a big thumbs up. He seemed to be telling me directly, We're out of here. You have fun with your guests, or quests, or whatever. He graduated high school, Meg said, as if she'd witnessed a miracle. I know, Sally said. We even had a cake. She pointed to another picture of Percy and Sally, beaming as they held up a baby blue cake with darker blue icing that read, Congratulations, Percy the Graduate. I did not ask why graduate was misspelled, dyslexia being so common in demigod families. Then, I gulped, he's not here. It was a silly thing to say, but some stubborn part of me insisted that Percy Jackson must be here somewhere, waiting to do dangerous tasks for me. That was his job. But no, that was the old Apollo's way of thinking. The Apollo I'd been the last time I was in this apartment. Percy was entitled to his own life. He was trying to have one, and oh, the bitter truth, it had nothing to do with me. I'm happy for him, I said, and Annabeth. Then it occurred to me that they'd probably been incommunicado since they left New York. Cell phones attracted too much monstrous attention for demigods to use, especially on a road trip. Magical means of communications were slowly coming back online since we'd released the god of silence, Harpocrates, but they were still spotty. Percy and Annabeth might have no idea about all the tragedies we'd faced on the West Coast, at Camp Jupiter and before that in Santa Barbara. Oh dear, I muttered to myself. I suppose that means they haven't heard. Meg coughed loudly. She gave me a hard shut-up glare. Right, it would be cruel to burden Sally and Paul with news of Jason Grace's death, especially when Percy and Annabeth were making their way to California and Sally must already be worried about them. Haven't heard what? Sally asked. I swallowed dryly. That we were coming back to New York. No matter. We'll just... Enough small talk, Lou interrupted. We are in grave danger. These mortals cannot help us. We must go. Lou's tone wasn't exactly disdainful, just irritated and maybe concerned for our hosts. If Nero tracked us to this apartment, he wouldn't spare Percy's family just because they weren't demigods. On the other hand, the Arrow of Dodona had told us to come here. There had to be a reason. I hoped it had something to do with what Paul was cooking. Sally studied our large tattooed friend. She didn't look offended, more like she was taking Lou's measure and pondering whether she had any clothes large enough to fit her. Well, you can't leave dripping wet. Let's get you some dry things to wear at least, and some food if you're hungry. Yes, please, Meg said. I love you. Estelle burst into a fresh peal of giggles. She had apparently just discovered that her father's fingers could wiggle, and she considered this hilarious. Sally smiled at her baby, then at Meg. I love you too, dear. Percy's friends are always welcome. I have no idea who this Percy is, Lou protested. Anyone who needs help is always welcome, Sally amended. Believe me, we've been in danger before and we've come through it. Right, Paul? Yup, he agreed without hesitation. There's plenty of food. I think Percy has some clothes that will fit. Is it Apollo? I nodded morosely. I knew all too well that Percy's clothes would fit me because I'd left here 6 months ago wearing his hand-me-downs. Thank you, Paul. Lou grunted. I suppose... Is that lasagna I smell? Paul grinned. The Blowfish family recipe. I suppose we could stay for a bit, Lou decided. The wonders never ceased. The Gaul and I actually agreed on something. Here, try this. Paul tossed me a faded Percy t-shirt to go with my ratty Percy jeans. I did not complain. The clothes were clean, warm and dry, and after trudging underground across half of Manhattan, my old outfit smelled so bad it would have to be sealed in a hazardous waste pouch and incinerated. I sat on Percy's bed next to Estelle, who lay on her back, staring in fascination at a blue plastic donut. I ran my hand across the faded words on the t-shirt. AHS Swim Team. What does AHS stand for? Paul wrinkled his nose. Alternative High School. It was the only place that would take Percy for just his senior year after... You know. I remembered. Percy had disappeared for the entirety of his junior year thanks to the meddling of Hera, who zapped him across the country and gave him amnesia, all for the sake of making the Greek and Roman demigod camps unite for the war with Gaia. My stepmother just loved bringing people together. You didn't approve of the situation or the school? I asked. Paul shrugged. He looked uncomfortable, as if saying anything negative would go against his nature. Estelle gave me a drooling grin. Ga? I took this to mean, can you believe how lucky we are to be alive right now? Paul sat next to her and gently cupped his hand over her wispy hair. I'm an English teacher at another high school, he said. AHS was, not the best. For kids who are struggling, at risk. You want a safe place with good accommodations and excellent support? You want to understand each student as an individual? Alt High was more like a holding pen for everybody who didn't fit into the system. Percy had been through so much. I was worried about him. But he made the best of the situation. He really wanted to get that diploma. I'm proud of him. Estelle cooed. Paul's eyes wrinkled around the edges. He tapped her nose. Boop. The baby was stunned for a millisecond. Then she laughed with such glee I worried she might choke on her own spit. I found myself staring in amazement at Paul and Estelle, who struck me as even greater miracles than Percy's graduation. Paul seemed like a caring husband, a loving father, a kind stepfather. In my own experience, such a creature was harder to find than an albino unicorn or free-winged griffin. As for baby Estelle, her good nature and sense of wonder rose to the level of superpowers. If this child grew up to be as perceptive and charismatic as she appeared to be now, she would rule the world. I decided not to tell Zeus about her. Paul, I ventured, aren't you worried about having us here? We might endanger your family. The corners of his mouth tightened. I was at the Battle of Manhattan. I've heard about some of the horrible things Sally went through, fighting the Minotaur, being imprisoned in the underworld, and Percy's adventures. He shook his head in respect. Percy has put himself on the line for us, for his friends, for the world, plenty of times. So can I risk giving you a place to catch your breath, some fresh clothes and a hot meal? Yeah, how could I not? You're a good man, Paul Blofus. He tilted his head, as if wondering what other kind of man anyone would possibly try to be. Well, I'll leave you to get cleaned up and dressed. We don't want dinner to get burned, do we, Estelle? The baby went into a fit of giggles as her father scooped her up and carried her out of the room. I took my time in the shower. I needed a good scrubbing, yes, but mostly I needed to stand with my forehead against the tiles, shaking and weeping until I felt like I could face other people again. What was it about kindness? In my time as Lester Papadopoulos, I had learned to stand up under horrendous verbal abuse and constant life-threatening violence, but the smallest act of generosity could ninja kick me right in the heart and break me into a blubbering mess of emotions. Darn you, Paul and Sally, and your cute baby too. How could I repay them for providing me this temporary refuge? I felt like I owed them the same thing I owed Camp Jupiter and Camp Half-Blood, the way station and the cistern, Piper and Frank and Hazel and Leo, and yes, especially Jason Grace. I owed them everything. How could I not? Once I was dressed, I staggered out to the dining area. Everyone was seated around the table except Estelle, who Paul informed me was down for the night. No doubt all that pure joy required a great amount of energy. Meg wore a new pink smock dress and white leggings. If she cherished these as much as the last outfit Sally had given her, she would end up wearing them until they fell off her body in burned and shredded rags. Together with her red high tops, which thankfully had been well cleaned, she sported a Valentine's Day colour theme that seemed quite out of character, unless you considered her sweetheart to be the mountain of garlic bread she was shoveling into her mouth. Lou was dressed in an XXL men's work shirt, with Electronics Megamart stitched over the pocket. She wore a fluffy turquoise towel around her waist like a kilt, because, she informed me, the only other trousers in the apartment large enough to fit her were Sally's old maternity trousers, and no thank you, Lou would just wait for hers to get out of the dryer. Sally and Paul provided us with heaping plates of salad, lasagna and garlic bread. It wasn't Sally's famous 7-layer dip, but it was a family-style feast like I hadn't experienced since the way station. That memory gave me a twinge of melancholy. I wondered how everyone there was doing. Leo, Calypso, Emmy, Joe, little Georgina. At the time, our trials in Indianapolis had felt like a nightmare, but in retrospect they seemed like happier, simpler days. Sally Jackson sat down and smiled. Well, this is nice. Shockingly, she sounded sincere. We don't have guests often. Now, let's eat, and you can tell us who or what is trying to kill you this time. Chapter 5. No swearing at the table. Then don't talk about that Nero. I wished we could have had regular small talk about the dinner table. The weather, who liked whom at school, which gods were casting plagues on which cities and why. But no, it was always about who was trying to kill me. I didn't want to ruin anyone's appetite, especially since Paul's savoury family recipe lasagna was making me drool like Estelle. Also, I wasn't sure I trusted Lugaselwa enough to share our whole story. Meg had no such qualms. She opened up about everything we'd been through, with the exception of the tragic deaths. I was sure she only skipped those to spare Sally and Paul from worrying too much about Percy. I don't think I've ever heard Meg talk as much as she did at Sally and Paul's dinner table, as if the presence of kindly parental figures had uncorked something inside her. Meg told them of our battles with Commodus and Caligula. She explained how we had freed 4 ancient oracles and had now returned to New York to face the last and most powerful emperor, Nero. Paul and Sally listened intently, interrupting only to express concern or sympathy. When Sally looked at me and said, "You poor dear," I almost lost it again. I wanted to cry on her shoulder. I wanted Paul to dress me in a yellow onesie and rock me until I fell asleep. "So, Nero is after you," Paul said at last. "The Nero. a Roman emperor, has set up his evil lair in a midtown high-rise. He sat back and placed his hands on the table, as if trying to digest the news along with the meal. I guess that's not the craziest thing I've ever heard. And now you have to do what? Defeat him in combat? Another Battle of Manhattan? I shuddered. I hope not. The Battle of Commodus and Caligula was hard for Camp Jupiter. If I asked Camp Half-Blood to attack Nero's base. No. Lou dipped her garlic bread in her salad dressing, proving her barbarian bona fides. A large-scale assault would be suicide. Nero is expecting one. He's hoping for one. He's prepared to cause massive collateral damage. Outside, rain lashed the windows. Lightning boomed as if Zeus were warning me not to get too comfortable with these kindly surrogate parents. As much as I distrusted Lugaselva, I believed what she said. Nero would relish a fight, despite what had happened to his two comrades in the Bay Area, or maybe because of it. I was afraid to ask what Lou meant by massive collateral damage. An all-out war with Nero would not be another Battle of Manhattan. When Kronos' army had stormed the Empire State Building, entrance to Mount Olympus, the Titan Morpheus had put all the mortals in the city to sleep. The damage to the city itself and its human population had been negligible. Nero didn't work that way. He liked drama. He would welcome chaos, screaming crowds, countless civilian deaths. This was a man who burned people alive to illuminate his garden parties. There has to be another way, I decided. I won't let any more innocents suffer on my account. Sally Jackson crossed her arms. In spite of the grim matters we were discussing, she smiled. You've grown up. I assumed she was talking about Meg. Over the last few months, my young friend had indeed got taller and... Wait, was Sally referring to me? My first thought, preposterous. I was 4,000 years old. I didn't grow up. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. The last time you were here, you were so lost. So, well, if you don't mind me saying. Pathetic, I blurted out. Whiny, entitled, selfish. I felt terribly sorry for myself. Meg nodded along with my words, as if listening to her favourite song. You still feel sorry for yourself. But now, Sally said, sitting back again, you're more human, I suppose. There was that word again, human, which not long ago I would have considered a terrible insult. Now, every time I heard it, I thought of Jason Grace's admonition. Remember what it's like to be human. He hadn't meant all the terrible things about being human, of which there were plenty. He'd meant the best things, standing up for a just cause, putting others first, having stubborn faith that you could make a difference, even if it meant you had to die to protect your friends and what you believed in. These were not the kind of feelings that gods had. Well, ever. Sally Jackson meant the term in the same way Jason had, and as something worth aspiring to. Thank you, I managed. She nodded. So how can we help? Lou slurped the last of the lasagna from her plate. You've done more than enough, Jackson, mother, and both his father. We must go. Meg glanced out of the window at the thunderstorm, then at the remaining garlic bread in the basket. Maybe we could stay until the morning. That's a good idea, Paul agreed. We have plenty of space. If Nero's men are out there searching for you in the dark and the lashing rain, wouldn't you rather they be out there while you're in here, warm and comfortable? Lou seemed to consider this. She belched, long and deep, which in her culture was probably a sign of appreciation or a sign that she had gas. Your words are sensible, Blofus, father. Your lasagna is good. Very well, I suppose the cameras will see us better in the morning anyway. Cameras? I sat up. As in Nero surveillance cameras. I thought we don't want to be seen. Lou shrugged. I have a plan. A plan like the one on the train? Because, listen here, small Lester. Hold it, Paul ordered. His voice was calm but firm, giving me an inkling as to how this kind, gentle man could control a classroom. Let's not argue. We'll wake Estelle. I guess I should have asked for this before, but, he glanced between Meg, me and Lou. How exactly do you know each other? Lou held us hostage on a train, I said. I saved you from capture on a train, she corrected. Lou's my guardian, Meg said. That got everyone's attention. Sally raised her eyebrows. Lou's ears turned bright red. Paul's face remained in teacher mode. I could imagine him asking Meg to elaborate on her statement, to provide 3 examples in a well-argued paragraph. Guardian in what sense, Meg? He asked. Lou glanced at the girl. The Gaul had a strange look of hurt in her eyes as she waited for Meg to describe their relationship. Meg pushed her fork across her plate. Legally, like if I needed somebody to sign stuff, or pick me up from the police station, or whatever. The more I thought about this, the less absurd it seemed. Nero wouldn't bother with the technicalities of parenthood. Signing a permission slip, taking Meg to the doctor, no thanks. He would delegate such things. And legal status. Nero didn't care about formal guardianship. In his mind, he owned Meg. Lou taught me swords. Meg squirmed in her new pink dress. She taught me, well, most stuff. When I lived in the palace, Nero's tower, Lou tried to help me. She was the nice one. I studied the giant Gaul in her electronics Megamart shirt and her bath towel kilt. I could think of many descriptions for her. Nice wasn't the first one that sprang to mind. However, I could imagine her being nicer than Nero. That was a low bar, and I could imagine Nero using Lou as his proxy, giving Meg another authority figure to look up to, a woman warrior. After dealing with Nero and his terrifying alternate personality, the Beast, Meg would have seen Lou as welcome relief. You were the good cop, I guessed. Lou's neck veins bulged against her golden talk. Call me what you like. I didn't do enough for my sapling, but I did what I could. She and I trained together for years. Sapling? Paul asked. Oh, right, because Meg's a daughter of Demeter. His expression remained serious, but his eyes twinkled, like he couldn't believe he was lucky enough to be having this conversation. I didn't feel quite as fortunate. I was gripping my fork so tightly my fist trembled. The gesture might have looked threatening if the tines hadn't been topped with a cherry tomato. You were Meg's legal guardian. I glared at Lou. You could have taken her out of that tower. You could have relocated, run with her, but you stayed. For years. Hey, Meg warned. No, he's right. Lou's eyes bored a hole in the casserole dish. I owed Nero my life. Back in the old times he spared me from, well, it doesn't matter now, but I served him for centuries. I've done many hard things for him. Then the sapling came along. I did my best. Wasn't enough. Then Meg ran away with you. I heard what Nero was planning. What would happen when you two came back to the city? She shook her head. It was too much. I couldn't bring Meg back to that tower. You followed your conscience, Sally said. I wished I could be as forgiving as our hostess. Nero doesn't hire warriors for their consciences. The big woman scowled. That's true, little Lester. Believe me or don't, but if we can't work together, if you don't listen to me, then Nero will win. He'll destroy all of this. She gestured around the room. Whether she meant the world, Manhattan, or the Jackson Blofis apartment, any of these possibilities was unacceptable. I believe you, Sally announced. It seemed ridiculous that a huge warrior like Lou would care about Sally Jackson's approval, but the Gaul looked genuinely relieved. Her facial muscles relaxed. The elongated Celtic tattoos on her arms settled back into concentric circles. Thank you, Jackson Mother. I believe you too. Meg frowned at me, her meaning clear. And so you will too, or I'll order you to run into a wall. I set down my tomato-topped fork. It was the best gesture of peace I could offer. I couldn't make myself trust Lugaselva completely. A good cop was still a cop, still a part of the mind game, and Nero was an expert at playing with people's heads. I glanced at Paul, hoping for support, but he gave me an almost imperceptible shrug. What else can you do? Very well, Lugaselva, I said. Tell us your plan. Paul and Sally leaned forward, ready for marching orders. Lou shook her head. Not you, my good hosts. I have no doubt you are brave and strong, but I will not see any harm come to this family. I nodded. On that, at least we agree. Once the morning comes, we're out of here, possibly after a good breakfast if it's not too much trouble. Sally smiled, though there was a tinge of disappointment in her eyes, as if she'd been looking forward to busting some evil Roman heads. I still want to hear the plan. What will you do? Best to not share too many details, Lou said, but there is a secret way into Nero's tower. From below, it is the way that Nero takes to visit the, reptile. Coils of lasagna seemed to tighten in my stomach. The reptile, Python, interloper at Delphi, my arch-nemesis and winner of Olympus magazine's least popular serpent award for 4,000 years running. That sounds like a terrible way in, I noted. It is not wonderful, Lou agreed. But we can use it to sneak in, Meg guessed. Surprise Nero? Lou snorted. Nothing to so easy, sapling. The way is secret, but it is still heavily guarded and under constant surveillance. If you tried to sneak in, you would be caught. I'm sorry, I said. I'm still not hearing anything resembling a plan. Lou took a moment to gather her patience. I was familiar with this look. I got it often from Meg and my sister Artemis, and, well, everyone, actually. The way is not for you, she said, but it could be used to sneak in a small squad of demigods, if any were brave enough and sufficiently skilled at navigating underground. Son of Hades, I thought. The Amphisbaena's words echoing in my head. Cavern runner's friend must show the secret way unto the throne. The only thing more unsettling than not understanding a prophecy was beginning to understand it. Then they would just get captured, I said. Not necessarily, Lou said. Not if Nero was sufficiently distracted. I had a feeling I was not going to like the answer to my next question. Distracted by what? Your surrender, Lou said. I waited. Lou did not seem the type for practical jokes, but this would have been a good moment for her to laugh and yell, "Not." You can't be serious, I said. I'm with Apollo, Sally said. If Nero wants to kill him, why would he? It's the only way. Lou took a deep breath. Listen, I know how Nero thinks. When I return to him and tell him you two got away, he will issue an ultimatum. Paul frowned. To whom? Camp Half-Blood, Lou said. Any demigods, any allies, anywhere who are harbouring Apollo. Nero's terms will be simple. Apollo and Meg surrender themselves within a certain amount of time, or Nero destroys New York. I wanted to laugh. It seemed impossible, ridiculous. Then I remembered Caligula's yachts in San Francisco Bay, launching a barrage of Greek fire projectiles that would have destroyed the entire East Bay if Lavinia Asimov hadn't sabotaged them. Nero would have at least as many resources at his disposal, and Manhattan was a much more densely populated target. Would he burn his own city, with his own palatial tower in the middle of it? Dumb question, Apollo. Nero had done it before, just ask ancient Rome. So you rescued us, I said, just to tell us we should surrender to Nero. That's your plan. Nero must believe he has already won, Lou said. Once he has you two in his grasp, he will relax his guard. This may give your demigod team a chance to infiltrate the tower from below. May, I echoed. The timing will be tricky, Lou admitted. But Nero will keep you alive for a while, Apollo. He and the reptile. They have plans for you. A distant thunderclap shook my chair. Either that or I was trembling. I could imagine what sort of plans Nero and Python might have for me. None of them included a nice lasagna dinner. And Sapling, Lou continued, I know it will be hard for you, going back to that place, but I will be there to protect you, as I've done many times before. I will be your inside woman. When your friends invade, I can free you both. Then together we can take down the Emperor. Why did Meg look so pensive, as if she were actually considering this insane strategy? Just a minute, I protested. Even if we trust you, why would Nero? You say you'll go back to him with your tail between your legs and report that we got away. Why would he believe that? Why won't he suspect you've turned on him? I have a plan for that too, Lou said. It involves you pushing me off a building. Chapter 6. Bye, Lucas Selwa. Don't forget to write if you ever hit the ground. I'd heard worse plans, but while the idea of pushing Lou off a building had a certain appeal, I was sceptical that she really meant it, especially since she wouldn't explain further or offer us details. Tomorrow, she insisted, once we're on our way. The next morning, Sally made us breakfast. Estelle giggled at us hysterically. Paul apologised for not having a car to lend us, since the family Prius, which we usually crashed, was on its way to California with Percy, Grover and Annabeth. The best Paul could offer us was a subway pass, but I wasn't ready to ride any more trains. Sally gave us all hugs and wished us well. Then she said she had to get back to baking cookies, which she did to relieve stress while she was working on the revisions for her second novel. This raised many questions for me. Second novel? We hadn't discussed her writing at all the night before. Cookies? Could we wait until they were done? But I suspected that good food was a never-ending temptation here at the Jackson Blofeld home. There would always be a next sweet or savoury snack that was more appealing than facing the harsh world. Also, I respected the fact that Sally needed to work. As the god of poetry, I understood revisions. Facing monsters and imperial mercenaries was much easier. At least the rain had stopped, leaving us a steamy June morning. Lou, Meg and I headed towards the East River on foot, ducking from alley to alley until Lou found a location that seemed to satisfy her. Just off Thirst Avenue, a 10-storey apartment building was in the process of a gut renovation. Its brick facade was a hollow shell, its windows empty frames. We sneaked through the alley behind the lot, climbed over the chain-link construction fence, and found the back entrance blocked only by a sheet of plywood. Lou broke through it with one sturdy kick. After you, she said. I eyed the dark doorway. We really have to go through with this? I'm the one who has to fall off the roof, she muttered. Stop complaining. The building's interior was reinforced with metal scaffolding, rung ladders leading from one level to the next. Oh, good. After climbing Sutro Tower, I just loved the idea of more ladders. Rays of sunlight sliced through the structure's hollow interior, swirling up dust clouds and miniature rainbows. Above us, the roof was still intact. From the topmost tier of scaffolding, a final ladder led up to a landing with a metal door. Lou began to climb. She had changed back into her Amtrak disguise, so she wouldn't have to explain the Electronics Megamart shirt to Nero. I followed in my Percy Jackson hand-me-downs. My funny Valentine, Meg, brought up the rear, just like old times at Sutro Tower, except with 100% less Reina Avila Ramirez Arellano and 100% more tattooed Gaul. One on each level. Meg stopped to sneeze and wipe her nose. Lou did her best to stay away from the windows, as if worried that Nero might burst through one and yell, Bora! I'm pretty sure that was Latin for boo. It's been a while since I attended one of Cicero's famous haunted house parties. That man did love to put on a toga over his head and scare his guests. Finally we reached the metal door, which had been spray painted with a red stenciled warning, roof access restricted. I was sweaty and out of breath. Lou seemed unperturbed by the climb. Meg kicked absently at the nearest brick as if wondering whether she could collapse the building. Here's the plan, Lou said. I know for a fact Nero has cameras in the office building across the street. It's one of his properties. When we burst out this door, his surveillance team should get some good footage of us on the roof. Remind us why that's a good thing? I asked. Lou muttered something under her breath, perhaps a prayer for her Celtic gods to smack me upside the head. Because we're going to let Nero see what we want him to see. We're going to put on a show. Meg nodded. Like on the train. Exactly, Lou said. You two run out first. I'll follow a few steps behind, like I finally cornered you, and am ready to kill you. In a strictly play-acting way, I hoped. It has to look real, Lou said. We can do it. Meg turned to me with a look of pride. You saw us on the train, Lester, and that was with no planning. When I lived at the tower, Lou would help me fake those incredible battles, so Father, Nero, would think I killed my opponents. I stared at her. Kill? Your opponents? Like servants or prisoners or just people he didn't like. Lou and I would work it out beforehand. I'd pretend to kill them, fake blood and everything. Then after Lou would drag them out of the arena and let them go. The deaths looked so real that Nero never caught on. I couldn't decide what I found most horrifying. Meg's uncomfortable slip calling Nero father, or the fact that Nero had expected his young stepdaughter to execute prisoners for his amusement, or the fact that Lou had conspired to make the show non-lethal to spare Meg's feelings rather than, refusing to do Nero's dirty work in the first place and getting Meg out of that house of horrors. And, are you any better? Taunted a small voice in my brain. How many times have you stood up to Zeus? Okay, small voice, fair point. Tyrants are not easy to oppose or walk away from, especially when you depend on them for everything. I swallowed the bitter taste in my mouth. What's my role? Meg and I will do most of the fighting. Lou hefted her crossbow. Apollo, you stumble around and cower in fear. I can do that. Then, when it looks like I'm about to kill Meg, you scream and charge me. You have bursts of godly strength from time to time, I've heard. I can't summon one on command. You don't have to. Pretend. Push me as hard as you can. Right off the roof. I'll let you do it. I looked over the scaffold railing. We're 10 stories up. I know this because we're 10 stories up. Yes, Lou agreed. Should be about right. I don't die easily, little Lester. I'll break some bones, no doubt, but with luck I'll survive. With luck? Meg suddenly didn't sound so confident. Lou summoned her scimitar into her free hand. We have to risk it, Sapling. Nero has to believe I did my very best to catch you. If he suspects something, well, he can't have that. She faced me. Ready? No, I said. You still haven't explained how Nero intends to burn down the city or what we're supposed to do once we get captured. Lou's fiery look was quite convincing. I actually believed she wanted to kill me. He has Greek fire, more than Caligula did, more than anyone else has ever dared to stockpile. He has some delivery system in place. I don't know the details, but as soon as he suspects something is wrong, one push of a button and it's all over. That's why we have to go through this elaborate charade. We have to get you inside without him realizing it's a trick. I was trembling again. I stared down at the concrete floor and imagined it disintegrating, dropping into a sea of green flame. So, what happens when we're captured? The holding cells, Lou said. They're very close to the vault where Nero keeps his fasces. My spirits rose at least a millimetre. This wasn't good news, exactly, but at least Lou's plan now seemed a little less insane. The Emperor's fasces, the golden axe that symbolised his power, would be connected to Nero's life force. In San Francisco, we destroyed the fasces of Commodus and Caligula and weakened the emperors just enough to kill them. If we could do the same to Nero. So, you break us out of our cells, I guessed, and lead us to the vault. That's the idea. Lou's expression turned grim. Of course, the fasces is guarded by, well, something terrible. What? Meg asked. Lou's hesitation scared me worse than any monster she might have named. Let's deal with that later. One impossible thing at a time. Yet again I found myself agreeing with the Gaul. This worried me. Okay then, she said. Lester, after you push me off the roof, you and Meg get out to Camp Half-Blood as fast as you can. Find a demigod team to infiltrate the tunnels. Nero's people won't be far behind you. But we don't have a car. Ah, almost forgot. Lou glanced down at her belt as if she wanted to grab something, then realised her hands were full of weapons. Sapling, reach into my pouch. Meg opened the small leather bag. She gasped at whatever she saw inside, then pulled it out tightly clutched in her hand, not letting me see. Really? She bounced up and down with excitement. I get to? Lou chuckled. Why not? Special occasion. Yay! Meg slipped whatever it was into her gardening pouches. Felt like I'd missed something important. What? Enough chat, Lou said. Ready? Run. I was not ready, but I got used to being told to run. My body reacted for me, and Meg and I burst through the door. We scrambled over the silver tar surface, dodging air vents and stumbling on loose bricks. I got into my role with depressing ease, running for my life, terrified and helpless. Over the last 6 months, I'd rehearsed that plenty. Lou bellowed and charged after us. Twin crossbow bolts whistled past my ear. She was really selling the whole murderous Gaul thing. My heart leapt into my throat as if I were actually in mortal danger. Too quickly, I reached the edge of the roof. Nothing but a waist-high lip of brick separated me from a 100-foot drop into the alley below. I turned and screamed as Lou's blade slashed towards my face. I arched backwards, not fast enough. Her blade sliced a thin line across my forehead. Meg materialised, screaming with rage. She blocked the Gaul's next strike and forced her to turn. Lou dropped her crossbow and summoned her second blade, and the two, Dimikari, went at it in a full-bore dramatic interpretation of Kung Fu Cuisinarts. I stumbled, too stunned to feel pain. I wondered why warm rain was trickling into my eyes. Then I wiped it away, looked at my fingers and realised, nope, that's not rain. Rain wasn't usually bright red. Meg's swords flashed, driving the big Gaul back. Lou kicked her in the gut and sent her reeling. My thoughts were sluggish, pushing through a syrupy haze of shock, but I seem to remember I had a role in this drama. What was I supposed to do after the running and the cowering? Oh yes, I was supposed to throw Lou off the roof. A giggle bubbled up in my lungs. I couldn't see with the blood in my eyes. My hands and feet felt like water balloons, wobbly and warm and about to burst. But sure, no problem. I would just throw a huge dual sword-wielding warrior off the roof. I staggered forward. Lou thrust with her left blade, stabbing Meg in the thigh. Meg yelped and stumbled, crossing her swords just in time to catch Lou's next strike, which would have cleaved her head in two. Wait a second, this fight couldn't be an act. Pure rage lit the Gaul's eyes. Lou had deceived us, and Meg was in real danger. Fury swelled inside me. A flood of heat burned away the haze and filled me with a godly power. I bellowed like one of Poseidon's sacred bulls at the altar. And let me tell you, those bulls did not go gently to the slaughter. I barreled towards Lugaselva, who turned wide-eyed, but had no time to defend herself. I tackled her around the waist, lifted her over my head as easily as if she were a medicine ball, and tossed her off the side of the building. I overdid it. Rather than dropping into the alley, she sailed over the rooftops of the next block and disappeared. A half-second later, a distant metallic clunk echoed from the canyon of First Avenue, followed by the angry weep, weep, weep of a car alarm. My strength evaporated. I wobbled and fell to my knees, blood trickling down my face. Meg stumbled over to me. Her new white leggings were soaked through from the wound on her thigh. "Your head," she murmured. "I know. Your leg." She fumbled through her gardening pouches until she found 2 rolls of gauze. We did our best to mummify each other and stop the bleeding. Meg's fingers trembled. Tears welled in her eyes. "I'm sorry," I told her. "I didn't mean to throw Lou so far. I thought she was really trying to kill you." Meg peered in the direction of First Avenue. "It's fine. She's tough. She's probably fine. But no time to talk. Come on." She grabbed my waist and pulled me up. We somehow made it back inside, then managed to navigate the scaffolds and ladders to get out of the hollow apartment building. As we limped to the nearest intersection, my heartbeat flumped irregularly like a trout on the floorboards of a boat. Ugh, I had Poseidon on the brain now. I imagined a caravan of shiny black SUVs full of Gemini roaring towards us, encircling our location to take us into custody. If Nero had indeed seen what had happened on that rooftop, it was only a matter of time. We'd given him quite a show. He would want our autographs, followed by our heads on a silver plate. At the corner of 81st and 1st, I scanned the traffic. No sign of Gemini yet. No monsters, no police or civilians screaming that they'd just witnessed a Gaulish warrior fall from the sky. "What now?" I asked, really hoping Meg had an answer. From her belt pouches, Meg fished out the item Lou had given her, a shiny golden Roman coin. Despite everything we'd just been through, I detected a gleam of excitement in my friend's young eyes. "Now, I summon a ride," she said. With a cold flush of dread, I understood what she was talking about. I realised why Lugaselva had given her that coin, and part of me wished I had thrown the Gaul a few more blocks. "Oh no," I pleaded. "You can't mean them. Not them." "They're great," Meg insisted. "No, they are not great. They're awful." "Maybe don't tell them that," Meg said. Then she threw the coin into the street and yelled in Latin, "Stop, O chariot of damnation!" Chapter 7. Chariot of damnation, why stoppest thou here? I don't use your app. Call me superstitious. If you're going to hail a chariot, you should at least try for one that doesn't have damnation right there in the name. Meg's coin hit the road and disappeared in a flash. Instantly, a car-sized section of asphalt liquefied into a boiling pool of blood and tar. At least that's what it looked like. I did not test the ingredients. A taxi erupted from the goo like a submarine breaking the surface. It was similar to a standard New York cab, but grey instead of yellow, the colour of dust or tombstones, or probably my face at that moment. Painted across the door were the words Grey Sisters. Inside, sitting shoulder to shoulder across the driver's bench, were the three old hags, the three mature female siblings themselves. The passenger side window rolled down. The sister riding shotgun stuck out her head and croaked, "Passage? Passage?" She was just as lovely as I remembered, a face like a rubber Halloween mask, sunken craters where her eyes should have been, and a cobweb and linen shawl over her bristly white hair. "Hello, Tempest," I sighed. "It's been a while." She tilted her head. "Who's that? Don't recognise your voice. Passage or not, we have other fares." "It is I said miserably. "The god Apollo." Tempest sniffed the air. She smacked her lips, running her tongue over her single yellow tooth. "Don't sound like Apollo. Don't smell like Apollo. Let me bite you." No," I said. "You'll have to take my word for it. We need a—" "Wait." Meg looked at me in wonder. "You know the Grey Sisters?" She said this as if I'd been holding out on her, as if I knew all three founding members of Bananarama and had not yet got Meg their autographs. My history with Bananarama, how I introduced them to the actual Venus and inspired their #1 hit cover of that song, is a story for another time. "Yes, Meg," I said. "I am a god. I know people." Tempest grunted. "Don't smell like a god," she yelled at the sister on her left. "Wasp, take a gander. Who is this guy?" The middle sister shoved her way to the window. She looked almost exactly like Tempest. To tell them apart, you'd have to have known them for a few millennia, which unfortunately I had. But today she had the trio's single communal eye, a slimy milky orb that peered at me from the depths of her left socket. As unhappy as I was to see her again, I was even more unhappy that, by process of elimination, the third sister, Anger, had to be driving the taxi. Having Anger behind the wheel was never a good thing. "It's some mortal boy with a blood-soaked bandana on his head," Wasp pronounced, after ogling me. "Not interesting, not a god." "That's just hurtful," I said. "It is me, Apollo." Meg threw her hands up. "Does it matter? I paid a coin. Can we get in, please?" You might think Meg had a point. Why did I want to reveal myself? The thing was, the Grey Sisters would not take regular mortals in their cab. Also, given my history with them, I thought it best to be upfront about my identity, rather than have the Grey Sisters find out halfway through the ride and chuck me out of the moving vehicle. "Ladies," I said, using the term loosely. "I may not look like Apollo, but I assure you it's me, trapped in this mortal body. Otherwise, how could I know so much about you?" "Like what?" demanded Tempest. "Your favourite nectar flavour is caramel creme," I said. "Your favourite Beatle is Ringo. For centuries all three of you had a massive crush on Ganymede. But now you like—" "He's Apollo!" Wasp yelped. "Definitely Apollo," Tempest wailed. "Annoying! Knows things." "Let me in," I said, "and I'll shut up." This wasn't an offer I usually made. The back door lock popped up. I held the door open for Meg. She grinned. "Who do they like now?" I mouthed, "Tell you later." Inside, we strapped ourselves in with black chain seatbelts. The bench was about as comfortable as a beanbag stuffed with silverware. Behind the wheel, the third sister, Anger, grumbled, "Where to?" I said, "Camp." Anger hit the gas. My head slammed into the backrest and Manhattan blurred into a light-speed smear. I hoped Anger understood I meant Camp Half-Blood, or we might end up at Camp Jupiter, Camp David, or Campobello, New Brunswick, though I suspected those were outside the Grey Sisters' regular service area. The cab's TV monitor flickered to life. An orchestra and a studio audience laughed track blare from the speaker. "Every night at 11, an announcer said. "It's Late Night with Thalia." I mashed the off button as fast as I could. "I like the commercials," Meg complained. "They'll rot your brain," I said. In truth, Late Night with Thalia had once been my favourite show. Thalia, the muse of comedy, not my demigod comrade Thalia Grace, had invited me on dozens of times as the featured musical guest. I'd sat on her sofa, traded jokes with her, played her silly games like Smite That City and Prank Call Prophecy. But now I didn't want any more reminders of my former divine life. Not that I missed it. I was, yes, I'm going to say it, I was embarrassed by the things I used to consider important. Ratings, worshippers, the rise and fall of civilizations that liked me best. What were those things compared to keeping my friends safe? New York could not burn. Little Estelle Blothis had to grow up free to giggle and dominate the planet. Nero had to pay. I could not have got my face nearly chopped off at that morning and thrown Lugaselwa into a parked car 2 blocks away for nothing. Meg appeared unfazed by my dark mood and her own wounded leg. Deprived of commercials, she sat back and watched the blur of landscape out of the window. The East River, then Queens, zipping by at a speed that mortal commuters could only dream of, which, to be fair, was anything above 10 miles an hour. Anger steered, completely blind, as Wasp occasionally called out course corrections. Left, brake, left, no, the other left. So cool, Meg said. I love this cab. I frowned. Have you taken the Grey Sisters cab often? My tone was the same as one might say, you enjoy homework. It was a special treat, Meg said. When Lou decided I'd trained really well, we'd go for rides. I tried to wrap my head around the concept of this mode of transportation as a treat. Truly, the Emperor's household was a twisted, evil place. The girl has taste, Wasp cried. We are the best way around the New York area. Don't trust those ride-sharing services. Most of them are run by unlicensed harpies. Harpies, Tempest howled. Stealing our business, Anger agreed. I had a momentary vision of our friend Ella behind the wheel of a car. Made me almost glad to be in this taxi. Almost. We've upgraded our service too, Tempest boasted. I forced myself to focus on her eye sockets. How? You can use our app, she said. You don't have to summon us with gold coins anymore. She pointed to a sign on the plexiglass partition. Apparently, I could now link my favourite magic weapon to their cab and pay via virtual drachma using something called Grey Rid. I shuddered to think about the Arrow of Dodona might do if I allowed it to make online purchases. If I ever got back to Olympus, I'd find my accounts frozen and my palace in foreclosure because the Arrow had bought every known copy of Shakespeare's First Folio. Cash is fine, I said. Wasp grumbled to Anger. You and your predictions. I told you the app was a stupid idea. Stopping for Apollo was stupider, she muttered back. That was your prediction. You're both stupid, snapped Tempest. That's my prediction. The reasons for my long-standing dislike of the Grey Sisters were starting to come back to me. It wasn't just that they were ugly, rude, gross and smelled of grave rot, or that the 3 of them shared one eye, 1 tooth and 0 social skills. It wasn't even the awful job they did hiding their celebrity crushes. In ancient Greek days, they'd had a crush on me, which was uncomfortable, but at least understandable. Then, if you can believe it, they got over me. For the past few centuries, they had been in the Ganymede fan club. Their Instagod posts about how hot he was got so annoying I finally had to leave a snarky comment. You know that meme with the honey bear and the caption, Honey, he gay? Yes, I created that, and in Ganymede's case it was hardly news. These days they decided to have a collective crush on Deimos, the god of fear, which just made no romantic sense to me. Sure, he's buff and he has nice eyes, but wait, what was I talking about again? Oh, right, the biggest friction between the Grey Sisters and me was professional jealousy. I was a god of prophecy. The Grey Sisters told the future too, but they weren't under my corporate umbrella. They paid me no tribute, no royalties, nothing. They got their wisdom from... Actually, I don't know. Rumour had it they were born of the primal sea gods, created from swirls of foam and scum, so they knew little bits of wisdom and prophecy that got swept up in the tides. Whatever the case, I didn't like them poaching my territory, and for some inexplicable reason, they didn't like me back. Their predictions. Hold on. I did a mental rewind. Did you say something about predicting you would pick me up? Ha! Tempest said. Wouldn't you like to know? Anger cackled, as if we should share that bit of doggerel we have for you. Shut up, Anger, Wasp slapped her sister. He didn't ask yet. Meg perked up. You have a dog for Apollo. I cursed under my breath. I saw where this conversation was going. The 3 sisters loved to play coy with their auguries. They liked to make their passengers beg and plead to find out what they knew about the future. But really, the old grey dingbats were dying to share. In the past, every time I'd agreed to listen to their so-called prophetic poetry, it turned out to be a prediction of what I would have for lunch, or an expert opinion about which Olympian god I most resembled. Hint, it was never Apollo. Then they would pester me for a critique and ask if I would share their poetry with my literary agent. Ugh! I wasn't sure what tidbits they might have for me this time, but I was not going to give them the satisfaction of asking. I already had enough actual prophetic verse to worry about. Doggerel, I explained for Meg's sake, means a few irregular lines of poetry. With these 3, that's redundant, since everything they do is irregular. We won't tell you then, Wasp threatened. We will never tell, Anger agreed. I didn't ask, I said blandly. I want to hear about the dog, Meg said. No, you don't, I assured her. Outside, Queens blurred into the Long Island suburbs. In the front seat, the Grey sisters practically quivered with eagerness to spill what they knew. Very important words, Wasp said, but you'll never hear them. Okay, I agreed. You can't make us, Tempest said, even though your fate depends on it. Hint of doubt crept into my cranium. Was it possible? No, surely not. If I fell for their tricks, I'd most likely get the Grey sisters' hot take on which facial products were perfect for my skin undertones. Not buying it, I said. Not selling, Wasp shrieked. Too important, these lines. We would only tell if you threatened us with terrible things. I will not resort to threatening you. He's threatening us, Tempest flailed. She slammed Wasp on the back so hard the communal eyeball popped right out of her socket. Wasp snatched it, and with a terrible show of fumbling, intentionally chucked it over her shoulder right into my lap. I screamed. The sisters screamed too. Anger, now bereft of guidance, swerved all over the road, sending my stomach into my esophagus. He's stolen our eye, cried Tempest. We can't see. I have not, I yelped. It's disgusting. Meg whooped with pleasure. This is so cool. Get it off, I squirmed, and tilted my hips, hoping the eye would roll away, but it stayed stubbornly in my lap, staring up at me with the accusatory glare of a dead catfish. Meg did not help. Clearly she didn't want to do anything that might interfere with the coolness of us dying in a faster-than-light car crash. He will crush our eye, Anger cried, if we don't recite our verses. I will not. We will all die, Wasp said. He is crazy. I am not. Fine, you win, Tempest howled. She drew herself up and recited, as if performing for the people in Connecticut 10 miles away. A dare reveals the path that was unknown. Anger chimed in. And bears destruction, lion, snake entwined, Wasp concluded, or else the princeps never be overthrown. Meg clapped. I stared at the Grey sisters in disbelief. That wasn't doggerel, that was terzarima. You just gave us the next stanza of our actual prophecy. Well, that's all we've got for you, Anger said. Now give me the eye, quick, we're almost at camp. Panic overcame my shock. If Anger couldn't stop at our destination, we'd accelerate past the point of no return and vaporise in a colourful streak of plasma across Long Island. And yet, that still sounded better than touching the eyeball in my lap. Meg, Kleenex? She snorted. Wimp. She scooped up the eye with her bare hand and tossed it to Anger. Anger shoved the eye in her socket. She blinked at the road, yelled, Yikes! And slammed on the brakes so hard my chin hit my sternum. Once the smoke cleared, I saw we had skidded to a stop on the old farm, just outside of camp. To our left loomed Half-Blood Hill, a single great pine tree rising from its summit, the golden fleece glittering from the lowest branch. Coiled around the base of the tree was Peleus, the dragon, and standing next to the dragon, casually scratching its ears, was an old frenemy of mine, Dionysus, the god of doing things to annoy Apollo.